An entity in crisis, with Northwest Parks and Tourism Board employees protesting over the late payments of salaries after failing to respond to requests from SABC News to provide clarity on the financial status of the entity. MEC for Economic Development, Environment and Tourism Bitsa Lenkopane eventually spoke on one of SABC's radio stations. She refuted claims that there were no funds to pay the Northwest Parks and Tourism Board employees' salaries, despite workers getting paid late in January. Lenkopane dismissed the whole incident as a myth.
It's a myth, it's a spoke story, because you gave them 45 million, and when people were dancing on the roads, I was at Parks and Tourism and people were getting salaries. That actually means people are masquerading in different forms after hijacking and hacking the state and taking the money of government, putting them in institutions that were never registered and were never in the competitive bidding and are not compliant in terms of supply chain.
The Northwest Legislature's Portfolio Committee on Economic Development, Conservation and Tourism called board members of the entity to appear before it, but the majority failed to show up. However, two former acting CEOs, Jeff Mabunda and Charlene Jacobs, painted a grim picture of the troubled entity. According to them, the entity that receives 55 million per quarter survived on making a number of advances. They allege that they were amongst others given an advance by the department through the head of the department, Lebohile Mafokane, but then forced to pay 7 million rand of that money to a service provider for the Mahikeng Cultural Festival.
So we took the little money that we borrowed from people's savings and took it back. Now, immediately when that money was paid on the 25, we were pressured to pay the service provider. It was paid 25, I think reflected on the 26. We had to pay 26 around after 4, just after 4. We paid the service provider the 7 million. So then you are left with 38. It's no longer 45, it's 38 million. Now that 38 million was then to keep us from November and December. So now November we took the one that we borrowed, we augmented, we paid the salaries, then we had to pay the salaries for December. Now, our salary bill for December is high, mainly because that's when we give the long service awards.
Another employee says she was troubled by the meddling of Lenkopane into their affairs and ultimately resigned as the acting CEO.
Then I realized in that week, some of the staff members were called to Protea Hotel that week. We were not even informed. Even me as the accounting officer at the time, I was not even informed that staff is being called. Now, Chair, I'm saying I'm open for flexibility, but I also know that we need to respect protocol. You can't then appoint somebody in office and then you overlook the person as if the person does not exist. So then, staff...
Who's calling the staff?
It was the MEC and the HOD, Chair. So then I realized that staff has been called this entire week. I was not even aware. Then what I've also learned in that week, that is now the build-up before I resigned as acting CEO. So I realized that even the supply chain unit was called, and they were told that from now on, SM processes must be, it must go through the MEC and through the HOD.
The unions say they had enough.
She does not understand the concept of separation of powers, that politicians are not supposed to be involved in issues of administration. Today, as we are here, these members of ours were supposed to have gotten their salaries, but unfortunately, they have not gotten their salaries as of today. Last month, a similar thing happened, and MEC went on to the media to say that it's a myth, the story that employees have not been paid. But to top it all, comrades, is the fact that the MEC has chopped and changed. From September to date, the entity has had 5 acting CEOs, with the one that has served the longest being 3 months.
We want the Premier to intervene in these problems, to to change the MEC because we do not have trust in the MEC, and also the employees of the entity have lost trust in the MEC.
Nehau also accused Lenkopane of intimidating them by taking legal action against one of its members for previously raising issues about her leadership.
The two employees of the department who appeared before the portfolio committee actually exonerated what we said as a union earlier, that the MEC is chopping and changing leadership in the institution, which led to the MEC suing the regional chairperson of Nehau in the person of myself for having uttered such statements.
The Northwest Legislature Portfolio Committee on Economic Development, Conservation and Tourism has called on the Premier to intervene.
We have escalated these issues to the Premier because the MEC reports to the Premier. We've said to the Premier these issues are important, they are urgent. Please attend to them so that we don't have this perpetuation of these issues where every month employees have uncertainty about whether they'll get their salaries or not.
The Provincial Department of Economic Development said the Northwest Parks and Tourism is obliged to participate at the Mahiken Cultural Festival on a contractual basis. It also refuted claims that there was undue interference.
The board came here to report about the 45 million that we deposited, and we went out of the country, and when we come back, she told me about the whole corruption. She gave me this, and when I asked her where was she and what did she do, that was when I was told she is on her way. It was in this boardroom, and later on I was told she has resigned. So I'm still waiting for her, but there's no interference.
Lenkopane says she's willing to drop the legal action she has taken against Nehau's regional chairperson if the union apologizes to her. The Office of the Premier says they are unable to comment on calls that Lenkopane must be removed. Tabang Murutwa, SABC News, Mahikeng.